Good afternoon, everybody. I haven't seen some of you for a while, including the staff. I'm Pete. I'm the general manager of the store. I've been in Long McQuade for 36 years. And unfortunately, a couple of years ago, I got cancer, so I've been in and out of the store. But now I'm pretty much on permanent disability and just dealing with that. And Barry is the manager of the store, and he's just doing a fantastic job, as he always did. It's always been, we've worked together for a long time. He's just been fantastic. And Kurt, our boy here, the whole band, you know, right since they were little kids, they were like that big, and they were coming in with their parents, and we just all loved them. I mean, they were just really, really nice kids. They were incredibly polite, just good people. And if there was anybody that we could ever wish for to do well, it was always them. They always had the talent, and they've worked hard, they've practiced hard, and One Bad Son has become just an amazing band. We're so incredibly proud of them. So I'm going to let Barry see anything, what he wants to say to you folks. And Kurt,
thank you so much.
Good to see you, my friend.
That means a lot.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, these guys have basically grown up at our store here, starting at the old store, and when they first started coming in, like Pete said, they were the same age as many of you here. And they have done a wonderful job of, you know, with lots of hard work to get where they are, from playing, you know, small little rooms and, you know, garages here in Saskatoon, to playing worldwide stages and having very successful albums and singles. So I remember Kurt coming in earlier on, and I remember selling you one of your first drum kits.
That's right.
And kind of following you as you, you know, as the band's progressed and things like that. And it's just so awesome to see the success you've had as a musician. You're also now a successful entertainment lawyer. And when Kurt contacted me about doing a drum clinic, at Long McQuade, during the month of March, we have what we call the Long McQuade Learning Series, which is a series of clinics we sponsor and put on free to the public to try and encourage people to take up and further their education in music and to get inspired. And when Kurt called me and he said, I'd like to do a clinic for you guys, and I want to aim it at people who are just starting out and just beginning, and I want to see if, you know, be able to try and inspire them to take up the drums or to go further with the drums, and you know, all inspire them to follow the wonderful things that they can do in music. And I said instantly, I'm on board. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And we're so happy to have, from One Bad Son, Mr. Kurt Dahl.
Thank you guys for coming. Do we have, I think we've got some chairs for like everyone standing there. No, it's all good, yeah. I wasn't sure, you know, this is my first drum clinic. I don't know how many people would show up, especially with the blizzard out there. I thought it would just be like my wife and my mom that showed up. My mom didn't even show up, so thank you all for coming. It means a lot to me. You know, this is my first drum clinic, so I don't really know what the heck I'm doing up here, to be honest. So I think I'm just going to talk about, you know, what sort of gets me excited about drumming. Talk about how I got to where I am today, and also just talk about like some of the tricks that I've learned over the years on the drums. I think that's kind of the cool thing about being a musician, whether you're a guitar player, drummer, singer. It's all about learning cool tricks. And we're kind of like magicians in that way. You know, you learn a trick and you play it in front of people, and they get blown away by it. You know, sometimes tricks take a day to learn, sometimes they take a week. Sometimes they take a year. You know, on this last tour, I started to try some stuff that I've worked on for like 10 years. So sometimes tricks take 10 years, but that's kind of the beauty of playing music, is sort of getting on stage and showing people what you've been doing in the basement for the last 10 years. Come on in, guys. So I want to start, before I talk about like how I got to where I am now, I want to just get an idea of how long each of you have been playing drums. So how many of you have been playing for like a year or less? Right on. Okay, lots of you. Hey. Okay. Okay, how about 5 years or less? And how has anyone been playing for like more than 10 years? Some of you have, nice, okay. Yeah, so I started, well I guess I should make a correction to what you said, Pete. It was a very heartfelt intro and I loved it. But you know, I didn't start off really young. I didn't start off playing music till grade 12, and I definitely wasn't talented when I started. So you said we started off really talented and polite. I think I was just polite. But thank you for the intro, it meant a lot. So for me, I was, in terms of playing music, I was a late bloomer. I didn't start playing till grade 12. So, you know, 1998 was when I started, and that gives you an idea of how old I am. So I've been playing for about 20 years. But starting grade 12, like all the musicians that I know started when they were like 5 or 6 years old. You always hear the stories, right? And that's great. I think the sooner you start, the better. And this is awesome to see all these young people here, right? But me, it was like grade 12, so I was, you know, way behind in terms of starting music, right? And I just, you know, when I started out, I just loved music. It was my life, you know, like early 90s bands like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, like those bands made me want to be a musician. But I didn't know what that meant, you know. So grade 12, everyone else is deciding what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And I was just like starting to get into music for the first time. And so I went and came down to Long McQuade, bought my first kit from Barry and Pete, and got it home, and I thought, I'm going to be a musician. The only catch was, I was horrible. I was absolutely horrible, and I don't exaggerate when I say that. Like, I was really bad. Not just like kind of bad, but really bad. And that lasted for several years. It wasn't like some people I think can just pick up an instrument and become great quickly. That wasn't me, you know. That was very much not me. So, and so I found myself, so it's grade 12, I bought a drum kit. I wanted to become a rock star like all my idols. But how do you get there, you know? I was very lazy when it came to practicing the traditional way to practice, which is rudiments, all that stuff. I was very lazy when it came to that, and I still am today. Like, I don't like doing this, you know, the real sort of intellectual practicing of drumming. I find it boring. So what I thought is, I had this great idea. Why don't I just plug in or set up my record player and put my drums beside it and sort of play along to all my favorite records. So I did that. I set up my kit beside my record player. It was an actual record player, like a vinyl records, which I still love to this day. And so I started playing, but the second I started hitting the cymbals, it was way too loud. I couldn't hear the record player, right? So I came back to Barry and sort of told him my idea, like I want to play along to my favorite records. And so he said, okay, what you need to do is get these special sort of studio cans. And that was these Vic Firth studio cans. I think you still have them, probably still sell them today, yeah. So they basically just like kind of suction to your head, and then you can hear what you're listening to a lot better without the outside noise coming in. So what I did is went back home, hopped on the kit, put a record on, put on the headphones, started playing again, and the second I started playing my kick drum, the record started to skip, you know. So then I said, what the heck am I going to do? So went back to Barry, and he said, we need an extension cord. So we set up at a big, long room in my parents' basement, and God bless my parents for putting up with years of not just drumming, but bad drumming. So I set up the drums at the one end, and then my record player at the other end. It was a big extension cord, plugged in, started playing, and it worked. So So without that advice from Barry and Pete, I wouldn't be here today, at least not playing drums. And so that was like kind of my big secret in terms of how I learned how to play drums, was just playing along with my idols, you know, instead of, and again, I'm setting a bad example by saying this, the left, right, left, right, left, right stuff is boring, but it was for me. So I wasn't inspired to learn drums that way. So all of a sudden, what I did was start with, well, first off, I tried to play along to like Led Zeppelin records, which I just wasn't good enough, you know, at the time. So I thought, well, what other records are a bit more easier to learn? So I put on a David Bowie, my favorite David Bowie record, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, which is a great record if you haven't checked it out. But it's got just great drumming that's, it's sort of simple, but like still really got it's got a lot of soul, and the drummer really plays in the pocket. So, and I'll play some of those beats a bit later and kind of show how I learned. But so I basically just went through that record front to back on each side. So do one side, flip it over to the other side, and I just played to that record until the grooves were worn out. And that record, I still have it to this day. And certain songs still skip because I played them so much on the vinyl, you know. And then, you know, so the first time through, I couldn't get through the first 2 songs, but I just kept going back, and eventually, after about a month or so of playing that record, I got all the way through the record. It was a big step for me. I'm playing along to David Bowie, you know, like what a cool feeling, right? And once I kind of mastered that record, I went to the Rolling Stones, an album called Sticky Fingers, and you know, so I'm playing along. So Charlie Watts, he's a great jazz drummer, but he's also on Stones records. He plays really, just keeps it simple, really soulful, in the pocket, totally groove based, and it's something you can learn to at an early stage. So, you know, what a cool feeling to be playing along with Mick and Keith. You know, to me that was like the best drum lesson, learning from those guys instead of just practicing sort of by myself. I'm looking at my notes here because. So why don't we start with let's just do a little groove from a David Bowie song, and I'll kind of explain what I'm doing once we go through it here. So let's see if this works here, Barry. Is that coming out of the big speakers? Nice. So I love this beat because it's just 2 kicks and 2 snares, and the hat doesn't change. So. So you can see how simple it is. Really, it's you know, the hi-hats don't change, which I think is cool. Like when you're starting to learn drums, I think the you know, you can really sort of keeping track of all the different limbs can get kind of confusing, right? Whereas this, for that groove, you start with the hats, and that doesn't change, which is kind of easy. And I just loved how it's. So simple, but also so cool. Like I never heard someone play that beat. So, and once you've got the hats, don't change, but you can add just little subtle things along the way. Like instead of just 2 kicks, you can kind of. You can basically, like, once you get the bare bones of the beat, you can sort of add from there, right? Which is kind of a cool start with. Drumming is simple. All instruments are simple, but it's what you do once you get sort of the groundwork set up, and then you can add from there. You know. Hey guys, come on in. We're just talking about David Bowie here. Hey Scott, all right. So that's the first record I kind of learned how to play to, and I recommend, like, you know, everyone learns how to play music differently. You may not like doing the listen to record things, and you don't have to use vinyl. You can use Spotify if you want now, but vinyl's a lot cooler. And some people, you might like doing like the actual rudiment stuff, and that's great. For me, this is how I learned. So then I went to song 2, you know, and it's almost like a hip hop beat. So both those songs and both the beats are really simple beats, you know, like, but they're so groovy, you know. And this one, it has that turnaround. So every like 3 bars, it kind of does this little turnaround, which that took me a long time to sort of figure out like when that comes in. And but once you play it long enough, it just all of a sudden will just come to you, you know. And that's it. I find in general when you're drumming, you shouldn't be thinking. You know, thinking. Our producer on this last record, he said, if you think, you stink. So the second you start to think about drumming, you lose your groove, or you lose your soul, in terms of the beat. You don't lose your actual soul. You just lose the soul, the feeling, and the beat. But you know, also when you're learning, I think there's a lot of thinking involved. Like when you're learning something new, you gotta think, right? So, but once you do it enough times, it's like muscle memory, you know. Like once you've done it enough times, sorry, this thing keeps kind of messing up on me. You practice so much and you play a beat so much that you don't have to think anymore when you do it, right? It's just like an athlete, right? Like when a shortstop gets a grounder hit to him, he doesn't think about it, he just does it, throws it, and because he's practiced it a million times, right? It's same with when I'm on stage, you know, it's like when I'm watching bands play live, like sometimes I can tell when the drummer or the guitar player is thinking, you know, first off, they're not very fun to watch if they're thinking, and secondly, they're like, you know, see them counting, you know, it's like 7, 8, oh, what the, you know, whereas I'm like, you know, standing up and put my arms up in the air, just being a real fool. But you know, it's because I'm having fun up there, right? And that's half the battle. Anyway, so that's sort of like the David Bowie sort of comment on how I started to learn. Let's play an OBS song now because it's kind of, you know, I guess I'm kind of vain, so I might as well play something I actually played on. So, one of my favorite songs ever is by the Tragedy Hip called "Ahead by a Century." And what I love about the drum beat on this song is the drums don't come in right away. There's sort of like this, the drummer's sort of laying back for the first like half of the song, and then when he comes in, it's like, it just adds, it's like the beat drops, and all of a sudden like you're going nuts. So I'll play this song first, and then we can, I'll show you how I sort of ripped it off for an OBS song. So you can see how like the drums are just sort of like keeping time almost. So it's got this sort of keeps the song moving along, and then you know it's not till let's just fast forward a bit. So the first chorus comes in, still no real beat. It's just kind of this keeping time, which is cool. Such a great song. Gord Downey, like what a loss. So the first chorus, again, no full beat. You're kind of waiting for it. The first time I heard the song, I was like, when's the beat gonna come in here? But that's part of the brilliance of it. Second verse starts, still no full-on beat. Rock it out. And so, it's kind of like Under the Bridge by the Chili Peppers. Like, you know, the beat doesn't come in until a bit later in the song, which makes it more effective, sort of. Second verse starts, still no drum beat. Like, when's it gonna drop? And then here it comes, and it's like all of a sudden the song's really, the train's moving now. So there it is, like the song's over, you're half done, the drums come in, which I thought was really powerful. So don't tell the Tragedy Hip this, but I did the same thing on our first big hit. And so I wanted to have a song that sort of built momentum like a wave, and this was kind of, that's not me, obviously. That beat sounds kind of similar to the hip song, isn't it? So I kind of just added like a bit more of a backbeat to add that sort of heartbeat sort of feel, which wasn't in the hip song, and just go on rim taps just to kind of add that sort of momentum. The hi-hat thing is kind of just a little, you know, it just sort of adds that movement. So the first chorus kicks in and still no real beat. And then so this, where I come in and steal the thing from the hip here. So that's kind of like the, so that's how I stole an idea from someone else, but it's really just being inspired by someone else.
And you're a lawyer?
I am, yes. That's why I can get away with it.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. It's, you know, that's the great thing about being inspired by, you know, listening to so many great records over the years. It's like you kind of like, you know, you get inspired and you take little things here and there and make it original, right? Like make it your own. So with that song, again, it's a good example. So live, you know, I always start with a simple foundation of a beat, right? So that's just kind of the, and then when the song kicks up, I add a snare, you know. It's got that sort of heartbeat vibe with the two kick drums. And then, you know, the solo kicks in and I go to the ride, but it's pretty much the same beat, right? And so you just add things along the way, you sort of build on top of the foundation as you go, right? So it's... So the beat itself doesn't really change, right? It's kind of the same beat throughout the whole song. You just add little things along the way, right? I think as a young drummer, what I realized is, or looking back, I realize now that when I was first starting out, I was trying to focus on starting with the all over the place sort of approach. Like I would start with all the frills instead of focusing on just the foundation, right? So if you're gonna build a house, you got a strong foundation. You don't worry about like custom wood countertops to start with. You know, you do that after. So I think that's, you know, it made me not nearly as good of a drummer when I was starting out because I was focusing on all the sort of fancy stuff when I should have been focusing on just the foundation, right? And then it looks like you're doing a bunch of different stuff, but really the foundation stays the same throughout the song. You just sort of add things along the way, which is kind of cool. Similarly with, let's do, while we're on the One Bad Son topic, let's just do, so this one, we're recording this is not our most recent album, but the album before that, we're recording it in Vancouver at the Warehouse Studios, which is this amazing studio owned by Brian Adams. You know, like AC/DC recorded there right after we did. So we finished our album and then the AC/DC came in to record their album right after us, which is pretty cool. And so we had this song that we knew, we didn't have a chorus for the song, so we just had a cool verse. And that's happened to us before. Sometimes you have the song where it's got a great verse, but sort of by definition, the chorus has got to be better. Like, you know, the chorus has got to go up somewhere and go somewhere special. And in the past, we had songs where we had an awesome verse and we couldn't get a better chorus, so we just scrapped the song. And there's one in particular we've been writing for like 8 years, and it's like a sore spot for all of us because we can't find a chorus for this damn song. So, you know, it just got scrapped. Whereas this song, Satellite Hotel, was kind of like that. We had a great, or what we thought was a great verse, but we didn't have a chorus. So we're in the studio, and finally it just sort of came to us out of nowhere. And then once we had the chorus, then everything just kind of took care of itself. But it started with this riff that Hicks had, and so this is kind of like one of the more jazzy. So it's kind of like a little bit of jazz groove I'm doing. So with that song, I mean, again, it's like the fundamental, the basics of the beat don't really change. It's kind of this sort of this jazzy sort of. You keep the kind of the groove the same and just add things as you go, which is kind of fun. Is there any questions so far? Like, I want to kind of make this not just me talking because that gets boring, but you know, have it be like a two-way street. So does anyone have any questions about anything so far? Or yeah.
You said that you went into the studio before you had the song fully written?
Yeah, which doesn't usually happen for us. Like, usually we like to. That's a great question. Like, usually we like to write everything in advance, but so this, and we did for that record. We had all the songs written. Except for this one, I always knew this could be a big song for us. So we just kind of played it to the producer, and we're like, we don't have a chorus. Like, do you have any ideas? And he's like, no, you guys are the musicians. Like, you know, write your own song kind of thing. But and we just sat around, all of us with acoustics, and sort of just like worked on it. And it's one of those moments that it was a eureka moment sort of thing. I think Shane came up with just the first line, and then from there it just like, you know, sort of snowballed. But usually it's not that glamorous, or it doesn't work that well, right? Like a lot of times you write, and it never happens, right? But yeah, so that one kind of was the exception. Some bands go into the studio with no songs ready, and they just sort of see what they can create. But that's never really been our style. It's sort of like we like to write them all beforehand, you know. Any other questions? Yeah, like ask me anything. Ask me about the band or the law or drumming, whatever.
So for beginners especially, like how did you decide your set up? Like which drums, you know, toms, snares? Because all sets are different.
Yeah, totally.
Especially for
That's a great question as well. So for me, yeah, I started out, like the first kit I bought, well, the first real kit was sort of this Pearl custom kit. Charcoal, yeah, Barry remembers. You know, and that's the cool thing too. Like when I went in and bought a kit, you know, 1998 or 99, like I was a nobody. You know, no one cared what band I was in or what kind of drums I wanted to play or whatever. Like I was a nobody. But Barry and Pete treated me like they treat me now, right? Which is with respect, and that's huge. And had had I walked into the music store and not had that experience, I may not be a musician today, right? So they kind of asked me what I wanted to do, what bands I like, what drummers I like, and at the time I was big into Pearl Jam and the Chili Peppers, so they kind of got me this kit that was, and I got a snare drum that was sort of like based on the Chili Peppers drummer. And, but yeah, I mean, without those guys kind of direct me, and they've been my mentors ever since, from a musical perspective, so that's 20 years in. So I started off with a kit that was sort of like had more toms up here, right, and kind of like just a ride way over here and cymbals up here. And I just found it was so spread out, so it wasn't my style. So this setup is very much based on John Bonham, you know, Led Zeppelin, my favorite drummer, along with Keith Moon from The Who. So it's kind of like, except Keith Moon, his setup, I mean, he was lucky enough to be a very wealthy rock star. So he had like 30 different toms and like 15 different cymbals. So I couldn't afford that setup, you know, even to this day probably. So, and he would trash those drums every night. So he's a spoiled rock star, which there's not as many of those around these days. But so this is kind of more based on a sort of a John Bonham setup, which is everything's big, you know, like big toms, like this is 14, 16, 18. You know, your fairly standard snare drum, but this is a really nice Ludwig Superphonic, is it? Yeah, it's a Ludwig Superphonic, which is kind of a cool word, which is basically the John Bonham snare that he used, which has got a really nice snap to it. And then the cymbals, well, then people always start talking about the kick size, right? So it's a 26-inch kick, which is almost as big as you can get. I just find I like that, just the bigness of that it's very 70s in sound. And then, you know, yeah, cymbals, again, these are all massive cymbals. People, when they first see the kit, they're like, what? Like, these are all huge. These are actually all ride cymbals, like, so they're technically they should be all like here for a ride. But because I'm just weird, I put them up as crashes, and they're just big and washy. And then, yeah, as far as like, the sticks, you know, these are the biggest sticks that ProMark, who's I'm lucky enough to be endorsed by, the biggest sticks they make. So, you know, they always, I don't think anything is big. This all just seems normal to me. But when people, like my stick guy tells me, like, don't sell these to kids because they're gonna like break their elbows if they start playing, or like, you know, like injure their forearms if they start playing these. So that's when I kind of realized that maybe it's not normal. But to me, it just seems to make sense for my playing. So I guess it really, and this is for all like the kids out there or anyone just playing, it's like, you know, whatever, you got to find what your style is, right? And there's only one you. So like, you know, there is no rules. Like, whatever you like, just go and find out what that is, and then try to add that to your drum kit, you know? And I think that's when you get sort of like, you can sort of achieve like a signature sound, which is kind of cool. I mean, I don't know if I have that necessarily, but maybe I do. Like, but whatever I have, it took me 20 years to sort of get there, you know? And that's like, yeah. So no one player is the same, no one drummer is the same. So just, I guess, experiment with different styles and see what yours is.